Hey, Scott Jordan here for Jancast number 218 for July 30th, 2026. You know, I got to do this show every 2 weeks, and I really enjoy the research and everything else on it. And I've gotten kind of into a rut a little bit about some of the health hazards that are happening nowadays, but I think it's a nice way of kind of giving information out. Well, we don't normally talk about our products that are involved with some of the things we discuss, but in this case, we're talking about measles, and we do have a bunch of products that are effective. But keep in mind that measles is airborne. While it can certainly be helped to be spread through contact surfaces, it's mainly getting around via airborne. The interesting thing is compared to COVID, um, one infected person can infect 12 to 18. Compare that to COVID, which is 2 to 3 based on the earlier strains. So we're going to cover this a little bit. I have my AI assistant. I asked her specifically to kind of dig into the myths that are involved. There's a lot of false information out there that it's just a rash. You don't have to worry about it. And I thought, what's better to get the research and everything else? We will publish the links to any of the data that's given out by the AI assistant or my Jancast co-host, who's also an AI assistant. So here you go. Hopefully this is helpful, and you can certainly pass it on to your customers because it's a concerning thing right now, and it's growing quickly.
Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so today we are digging into a public health situation that has honestly caught a lot of people entirely off guard. Right now, across the years 2025 and 2026, the United States is dealing with a shocking 34-year high in measles cases. Yeah, a disease we really thought we had left in the rearview mirror is making a comeback, and it has brought some genuinely terrifying realities along with it, including a biological phenomenon called immune amnesia. But how exactly did we get here? Well, a massive part of this crisis is being driven by persistent, widespread myths. So today we're going to put all the noise aside and look strictly at the data, the science, and the medical reality to figure out exactly what is going on.
All right, let's just dive right in. Here's our roadmap for today. 1. The 2026 measles resurgence. 2. Airborne transmission dynamics. 3. The mild illness myth. 4. Immune amnesia and SSPE. 5. Debunking MMR vaccine myths. And finally, protecting our future.
Starting off with Section 1, the 2026 measles resurgence, a 34-year high in the U.S.
To really wrap our heads around the scale of what public health officials are dealing with right now, we have to look at the historical context. We are currently seeing the highest case count since 1992. And the number, 2,318, it's staggering. By just July of 2026 alone, the CDC had already recorded 2,318 cases. That is a massive spike. It officially outstrips the incredibly high total of 2,289 cases that we saw in the entirety of 2025. The numbers are climbing, and they're climbing incredibly fast.
Now, you might be thinking this is just an outbreak among little infants who haven't had their shots yet, right? Well, the data shows us something completely different, and it's truly fascinating. Only 20% of cases are in children under 5. A massive 50% are actually in the 5 to 19 age bracket, and 30% are in adults over 20. This brilliantly illustrates a crucial point. This isn't just some sudden, recent dip in infant vaccinations. This wide age distribution proves that we're dealing with a long-standing issue of undervaccination that's been affecting all age groups over the last several years.
Let's move on to Section 2, airborne transmission dynamics, how the virus spreads. We really need to understand exactly how this virus operates, because the mechanics of the measles virus make it an absolute master of airborne transmission. Medical experts note that measles is roughly 6 times more contagious than COVID-19. To put that into perspective, just one single infected person can generate up to 18 secondary infections in a completely unvaccinated population. With COVID-19, that rate was generally around 1 to 3. Measles just absolutely tears through vulnerable groups. But here is the truly terrifying fact that makes measles so difficult to contain. The virus remains active and highly contagious in the air or on infected surfaces of a room for up to 2 full hours after the infected person has left. Seriously, 2 hours! You don't even need to come into direct physical contact with a sick person. You just have to breathe the air in a room they occupied an hour ago. Dr. William Moss, an infectious disease epidemiologist, offers a really vivid analogy for this kind of transmission. He says, quote, I like to use a forest fire metaphor, where you've got these sparks. Some of those sparks land in vulnerable communities, and you get a larger outbreak there. This is exactly what we saw driving the massive case counts, with sparks from initial outbreaks landing in under-vaccinated pockets, leading to explosive and simmering outbreaks in places like South Carolina and Utah. Which brings us to Section 3, the mild illness myth, the grim reality of complications. You know, there's this really persistent, dangerous narrative out there that measles is just a benign childhood rash. You know, a few days of fever, some spots, and healthy kids bounce right back. But the medical data paints a much grimmer reality. The crucial point here is that 1 in 5 children under the age of 5 who get measles end up in the hospital. The complications are severe. We're talking pneumonia, which is actually the most common cause of death, ear infections that can cause permanent hearing loss, and acute encephalitis, which is a really dangerous swelling of the brain. Ultimately, 1 to 3 out of every 1,000 cases results in death. Globally, despite there being a highly effective vaccine, an estimated 95,000 people died from measles in 2024 alone. And the immediate physical symptoms aren't the only threat. Section 4, immune amnesia and SSPE, the long-term dangers. So there are hidden long-term horrors of a measles infection that are far too often ignored. First up is this terrifying biological phenomenon called immune amnesia. The measles virus actually attacks and infects your immune cells directly. It can essentially wipe out your body's protective memory, making your immune system forget how to fight off diseases you've already recovered from in the past. So after a measles infection, children are left extremely vulnerable to other everyday illnesses because their immune system has been compromised. It's like wiping the hard drive of your immune system. Let's see how this builds, because this vulnerability can lead to something even more devastating: subacute sclerosing panencephalitis, or SSPE. It's a fatal brain disorder that basically acts like a ticking time bomb. Looking at the timeline, it often begins with an initial measles infection that might even seem totally mild at the time. But then, the virus hides out in the brain, completely under the radar. 6 to 8 years later, that latency period ends. A child might begin to show behavioral changes, dropping grades, irritability. Then this progresses to severe physical decline, involuntary muscle spasms, losing the ability to walk or swallow. Tragically, it almost always leads to a vegetative state and death within 1 to 3 years of diagnosis. It is rare, but it is an entirely preventable nightmare.
Section 5, debunking MMR vaccine myths, separating fact from fiction. Honestly, the only reason a virus this dangerous is surging back into our communities is because of misinformation. So let's objectively separate fact from fiction. The most persistent myth is that the MMR vaccine causes autism. The facts on this are incredibly clear. This myth stems entirely from a single, small study back in the late 1990s. That study was extensively reviewed by scientists and found to be completely falsified. The doctor who published it actually had his medical license revoked for ethical violations and falsifying research. Since then, countless massive follow-up studies worldwide have conclusively proven that zero connection exists between vaccines and autism.
Then there is the very dangerous myth regarding natural immunity. This idea that getting the actual disease is somehow better or safer than getting the vaccine. As we literally just saw with immune amnesia and SSPE, the natural disease can be permanently debilitating or even fatal. In stark contrast, the 2-dose MMR vaccine is incredibly safe and 97% effective. Through widespread use, this vaccine successfully averted nearly 59 million deaths globally between the years 2000 and 2024. 59 million. And lastly, there's the myth that supplements like vitamin A or cod liver oil can cure or prevent measles. The hard medical fact is that there is absolutely no cure for the measles virus once you have it. Vaccination is the only prevention. While doctors may use controlled doses of vitamin A to help manage severe complications in patients who are already infected, just taking supplements daily will not stop the virus, and taking too much can actually be highly toxic to your liver.
All right, let's bring it all together. Section 6, protecting our future, the need for herd immunity.
So what does this all mean? Why do all these numbers, facts, and debunked myths matter to your immediate community right now? Because measles is so unbelievably contagious. You need a very high wall to keep it out. We call this the herd immunity threshold, and for measles, it sits at 95%. Pre-COVID-19, U.S. kindergarten MMR vaccination rates hovered just under that line at 94%. But post-COVID, dropping into 2026, the national average has fallen to 91%. Now, that 4% gap might look small on a chart, but it is a massive hole in our collective armor. It leaves vulnerable populations, like infants who are too young to get the shot, and the immunocompromised entirely exposed. And that gap has real, immediate consequences. The United States officially declared measles eliminated in the year 2000. But elimination status is an incredibly fragile state. It means that while the virus might be brought in by international travelers, it doesn't stay and circulate for more than 12 months. But with the continuous, simmering outbreaks we're seeing through 2025 and 2026, epidemiologists are warning that the U.S. is on the very brink of losing this incredible milestone. If we lose it, the disease becomes endemic again, completely changing the baseline of public health as we know it. Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. Are we really willing to sacrifice our hard-won elimination status and our community's health because of preventable misinformation? The science is clear. The data is right in front of us. And the choice of how we protect our future is ultimately ours. I highly encourage you to keep exploring the source material we covered today to fully understand how individual choices impact our collective safety. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep asking the right questions.